Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 650. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Wayland, Dr. Norge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the Duke of the Sultan of Strategery, the indestructible, bridge-defying, soon-to-be spinning off in his own miniseries Sensei 71, starring the actor who played young Sheldon, and the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we're going to be talking about Catwoman number 34 and Batman Urban Legends number 6. In particular, that Tim Drake story that has generated a lot of buzz. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
We got a cool Catwoman 4-part story going on. It looks like it's kind of Elseworldish. So it's not actually going current continuity, but I'm looking forward to it. It's 40% off, only $4.19. And we've got the Wonder Woman 80th anniversary 100-page special, multiple variant covers. So you know me, I'm getting all of those because I'm all in on that. That's also 40% off, only $5.99. Thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they've got their top sellers. And I love looking this over because there's books that I miss. A book that I really want to grab, I've got the Starman collections that have come out, the hardcover collections. But they put out, and this is a book, if you missed it, I'm going to pick this up. It's like, do I need to own Starman again? Yes. Starman Compendium 1. This is a complete collection. It's $59.99 regularly. 42% off, only $34.79. This is the James Robinson series. If you did not read this, this is I've got to give you this my highest possible recommendation. So I just wanted to shout that out this episode. Another book that I've been collecting again is Sandman Deluxe Edition Book 3. Big fan of Neil Gaiman's Sandman. These deluxe editions have been fantastic with the extras and the way that they're formatting them. Black label now. Pick this up. Great series. I want to thank InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you get better. Enjoy the show.
One more quick thing. Be sure to check out, we do have a listener voicemail from Rasul that we're going to be talking about a little bit later in the podcast. So, without further ado, let's talk some comics.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Our first discussion's on Catwoman, issue number 34. The writer is Ram V, with Fernando Blanco as artist. Jordi Belair as colorist, Tom Napolitano on letterer, Yannick Panquet, Nathan Fairbairn on cover, Jenny Friesen on variant cover, Steve Lieber with Marissa Luis on the Suicide variant cover, Ben Mayers is the assistant editor, Jessica Chen is the editor, and Ben Abernathy is group editor.
So this book is everything I love about the Batman universe. It's the relationship between Bruce and Selina. When we talk about progression, I want to see this lead to something with them, to some form of future, because this story, I think, highlights exactly why, as a couple, they are so interesting. You don't need to drop Catwoman being Catwoman and Batman being Batman. I think that would be a huge mistake. It's more seeing how do they deal with, as a married couple, all of this. Because I think we're seeing Catwoman continue to evolve and come into her own. And I think this series has been Catwoman very similar to Robin, very similar to Nightwing, has enjoyed having some great writers and some great artists who have been involved historically in her books. That whether she's had an ongoing or a mini series or any of that have really delved into what makes this character unique and interesting. And her interpersonal relationships are wonderful. I don't think them being a couple or being married takes away from any of that. If anything, it adds another layer to that dynamic. What you don't want to do is turn them into Lois and Clark. because I think what makes Lois and Clark so fun together is how unique it is being Lois Lane reporter and Clark Kent Superman / reporter trying to make it in this world where you've got an alien married to a human and now a family. It's very different in Batman's world, and that will always be unique. And we talk about progression, I think there's some real opportunities to explore all of that. So I'm excited to see. I'm hoping that this exploration that we get in the beginning of this issue, I didn't expect Bruce to save her. I thought actually at the end of the last issue that was a dream sequence, where we were going to find out that somebody else rescued her or she pulled herself out or something like that. I love more that the bold move is that it was him and that he did save her, and we're getting a chance for more of this exploration. I dig this series a lot. Where are you at on this book? I mean, I'm kind of diarrhea of the mouth because of how much I'm digging it. Are you enjoying this book? And what is it, if you are enjoying it, Jim, what is it that you're finding that's drawing you to it?
Funny, first thing, I always love when you really love a book, you can tell, because you always open the way where you're just like the diarrhea of the mouth, where you're just going and going and going. And I'm just sitting back going, yes, agree. Wait,
because
I'll tell you right now,
there's a reason.
I love this as well.
There's a reason it's called Raging Bullets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry, please. I'm really anxious to hear what you think.
No, I'm loving this as well, and a lot of the stuff you were saying, I was nodding my head along with it, And one of the things, like I'm so glad you said how you thought it was a dream sequence, because I was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking, there's no way that's Bruce, because they said they're going to give a part, and Bruce wouldn't go against it. But the fact that they did and he did, I absolutely loved it, and I loved the opening where he's sitting there with the mask down, and she even calls him Bruce, not Bat and Cat. Mm-hmm. And I love this personalized moments we get between these two. You look back and you think about it, because like you, I love Lois and Clark. I love the relationship, but also Barry and Iris, Arthur and Mira. How many different relationships are in the DC universe? Ali and Dinah. I always love that relationship, And each one has their own little twist on what is the relationship, what is the boundaries, what do they do, how do they do it. And I love this dynamic fits both Bruce and Selina. It can't just be a Bat relationship. This is a Bat and Cat relationship. It's one of the strengths of Lois and Clark. Their relationship is a Lois and Clark relationship. It's about what the two of them are involved in, what these two are involved in. It's that's something that I really have enjoyed ever since the beginning of this series, when they were going to get married, they didn't get married, and where are they? What's going on between them? Will they, won't they kind of thing. And just the whole relationship that we've seen grow between these two since, for 30-some issues now in this book, plus also how the relationship is told in the Bat books. This is a really cool story that had been playing out over this whole time. And this last group of story I absolutely have been really loving, because these have been really a Selina story. And it's like, even like the cover is the joke. Hey, I thought we were on a break. When they did that whole break and they did that whole separation where Bruce said, hey, I got to focus, on what life is like now. We both were like, don't break them up. And it isn't. It's actually making them stronger. The fact that he can come in this moment and have these moments with her where they're back again when they're needed, but he doesn't have to stay the entire time. And again, great moments between these two, just the personal, the tender moments, and just, seeing her as a hero. She's really, in her series, this series, crossed over from the thief with the heart of gold to the hero. And I kind of like seeing that change of her. Now, is she 100% clean? Not completely. Cats have a little bit of a wild streak to them, and she's got that little bit of a wild streak to her, and that keeps her who she is. And Bruce wouldn't want that gone. I, of course, don't want that gone because it makes for great stories, but it fits her person. So far, everything that's been told in these stories have fit who she is. From her taking over Alleytown, from everything that, just these recent runs where she's becoming the queen of Gotham. And is she a villain? Is she a hero? What is she? to me, she's a Gotham hero, which means you got to be a little bit dirty. You got to, and by dirty, I don't mean corrupt. I mean you're not Superman. You're not the big, blue Boy Scout. You got to have a little dirt under the fingernails sometimes. When you're in Gotham, that's the kind of city Gotham is. Bruce is a little bit hard. So in all of the Bat family, and she's a solid part of the Bat family. She doesn't need him, for an existence, but she is part of the Bat family. She does fit in that model and does well in Gotham because of it. So I'm loving this story and absolutely loving the portrayal of her, especially, and that's the key. If this is her book, you gotta love how she's being written. It's not just about their surrounding cast, which I'm absolutely crazy over, but first and foremost, you gotta love her, and they're doing a fabulous job with her.
But, and that's nodding and agreeing with everything you're saying, but what's really critical is that there's a supporting cast that you care about. Because when things happen to them, and they're attacked, when they're taken, or they're hurt, or they're killed, any of the things that can happen to them, they matter to you. I mean, and that's been, I think, a critical piece of the writing as well, is developing a supporting cast that really matters, and also understanding the relationships and the interpersonal relationships and the dynamic. The writing of Bruce in this is spot on and feels very fluid. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the visual style of not only this book, but of the recently released annual. I think this book, this variation of Catwoman, has really enjoyed what a style that I really, really dig for Catwoman. I love books like Daredevil and Catwoman, Batman, obviously Batman, but Nightwing. Because what ends up happening is thematically they start to craft a vibe for the city that they take place in, for the environment that they take place in. And this has, even though it's a part of Gotham, it's got a unique styling to the rest of Gotham. It clearly feels like it's a suburb, an offshoot, it's its own place with a very different theme to it. And you can see why the personality of it, we talk about how Gotham's alive. Well, you can now start taking these little areas that are being carved out and have been carved out over some time and really feel like they're defining, you and I are both living offshoots of Cleveland, right? And the cities that we both live in couldn't be more different, but yet they are suburbs of Cleveland. As you get closer into Cleveland, Cleveland has its own little segmented sections that are very unique. That's what a big city has. It has not only the city proper, but it's carved out into its own little sections, and then has many suburbs that are attached to it. This environment that they're crafting for Gotham makes Gotham as a concept even more three-dimensional, that you can do whole books about whole sections of Gotham that still have untapped potential. I am banging my head against the wall with Father Valley that it never dawned on me that the Valley part would be a link to Azrael, because that is brilliant. His backstory has been... I've loved the character since the introduction. There was the look, the presence, the way that he operates has had a really competent, but also a creep factor to it. Like, he feels dangerous and interesting, and he feels like a character that has some longevity, where this is going to be like when Bane was introduced, and Hush, and characters like that. Father Valley feels like a character that we're going to be talking about 10 years from now as being somebody that reoccurs. This is a great introduction of yet somebody else to be added to the Gotham Rogues that can appear in Nightwing, can appear here, can appear in Batman, and be an interesting character, interacting with other villains, interacting with other heroes, interacting with supporting cast in a way that is going to be meaningful. And I just see him being this interesting sort of complication to the world. I loved the backstory. I didn't see that. I don't know why I didn't see that coming. Because when I was reading the annual, I'm like, where are they going with this? Like, why? Like, are we talking about the Order of St. Dumas and all the Azrael stuff? I love that, and I'm a huge fan of that. But I was like, where is this coming from? Like, oh no, wait, really? And my mind was blown that he's kind of a stepbrother of sorts to our Azrael. Or a adopted brother of sorts, at least, thematically or spiritually. I didn't see that coming. Did you? Was that on your radar?
Actually, it was on my radar.
Cool.
But I honestly didn't think it was actually brother. Well, I didn't even think it was as tight of a connection.
Yeah.
I just was under the impression that all of them had the last name Valley. That if you're in the Order of Duma, that was the, that was your last name. When they started talking about the order and all that stuff, I'm like, oh, okay. And then Valley, I see the one guy's name Valley. Then I saw the one guy didn't have the last name Valley. And I was like, wait a minute. I thought everybody in this order has it, And then as you're going through reading, like, oh, okay. Okay. Because I was just under the impression that was their name. When you join the order, you become a Valley because it's, kind of all ancestral with the valleys and this and that and whatnot. And that was my take on it. So, so I was expecting something like that, but it wasn't 100%. Yeah, well, I didn't know the whole truth behind it. So
no, that's the funny part is that the Valley that you're referencing was actually our Azrael's dad,
right?
And he was in there, so I loved that. And I think that's due to our different reading experiences because I read all of Azrael, huge Denny O'Neil fan, but the funny part is. I think my roadblock is I wasn't. It's funny I can make that statement, but yet it wasn't on my radar at all that he's even linked. It was on your radar. You're like, I guess I thought he was part of it.
Well, the whole thing with me was all the religious quotations and, of course, using the sword and this and that. And I was just saying, oh, okay. I'm like, hey, he's probably is. Then when I saw the name Valley, I'm like, oh, okay, he's in the order. Okay. And I honestly thought that was it. I thought we were going to see him go rogue and this and that. And then when the backstory started playing out, that's when I realized, oh, okay, that's not an order name. They have their own individual name. So, So then I was thinking as I'm reading the backstory, which, by the way, I love the fact that where they gave us the backstory. That was brilliant. If they had given that up front, it still would have been a cool story, but it's better after we got a cool understanding of the guy and we started knowing who he is, and we started, we started asking ourselves, who is this? Who is this? And after we asked it a couple times, they finally give it to us. I thought that was a great usage of an annual to actually tell this kind of story. So brilliant on them on how they did that. I absolutely love that. But it was a neat thing to give us at the right time, and then an annual continuing the story. I was very happy, with this progression of this story arc. This is a really cool story that I'm like looking for the collectibles on it, looking for the collected edition on it. This is kind of something that you can put on the shelf and say, if you feel like a really cool Catwoman story, you pull this one off the shelf because this is a great story.
Hadley and his confrontation with Bruce, or not, calling on Bruce. What a smart move, because this is a time where the relationship between police and vigilantes, it's outlawed. I mean, it's almost worse than it was back when Batman originally met Jim Gordon, right? Because there is like a whole different level with the magistrates. There's a whole different level of really militaristic approach against vigilantes that is going on in this power struggle for Gotham. So when they meet, it's, he's recognizing, listen, she's going to need some help. There is this Father Valley. I'm seeing here that this is being set up. I like the guy a lot, but it's like anybody where like my friend, this is my friend's girl. And that's one of the things that I really love about this dynamic. If Bruce and Selina were not in the kind of relationship that they were, this would read very differently. If both of them were like quote unquote suitors, the fact that Bruce has this relationship, I find myself even more protective of the relationship. it's not like Bruce jumping from Catwoman to Talia to Silver St. Cloud to, it's Bruce and Selina. And yet I like this guy, and I could see how Selina could be drawn to him because of the fact that, he's a good guy who's trying to do the best that he can, and, in the way he's, anti-establishment, in what he's doing, because he's taking some bold steps here because he cares. Not only about her, but he cares in general about what he's doing. So I could see her being attracted to him. And because you get why, because he's a cool dude. But yet I'm like, well, Bruce is a cooler dude. She should be with Bruce. I mean, clearly she should be with Bruce. I loved that was the emotional roller coaster I was going through in this, where I like him, but when Bruce is like, how do I compete with that? You don't. I just love that whole sequence. And because there's a little bit of a jealousy aspect there that Bruce is, showing, and territorial. And that happens in relationships where, I think you should always care about the person you're with enough that there's that element. I think you can take that also too far. There's a fine line where it's cute and endearing, and there's another part where it's like now it's controlling or way too over the top. I think I like that this skirts that line because it feels more human and more natural, right? Where you can pick that wasn't a confident Bruce. That was I'm not sure about you, dude, but just remember, you care about her. I'm picking up on it, but I do too, and I'm Batman.
Well, I like the fact that as Batman, we do have a kind of declaration that he cares about Catwoman.
Yep.
I thought that, for me, was a really neat moment because there's always been the talking, about Bat and Cat, and everybody knows there's a dance between them, but there's never really been a declaration as Batman that he cares about the cat to an outsider. And within the circles, within the circle of trust, that he acknowledges it. But this detective is an outsider, and he's admitting it to an outsider. I think that, for me, was a really cool moment for Bruce and Selina. I think, oh, that's kind of cool. And it always makes me, though, I love seeing it because, again, like you, I'm like, yeah, put him in his place. That's my girl, dude, But I do wonder, down the line, how does this play out? How does the Bat and Cat story end? Can they end happily ever after like Lois and Clark can? Yes. Or is this a doomed, tragic relationship? I always wondered. That's always the thing that goes through my mind.
No, but it's a rocky path. Because here's the catch. We have this sequence, right? I could get you out of here, Selina. Things are going to get rough. Would you leave? Right now, if I said I'd go with you, I would go if you came with me. Would you leave? And that's the piece. She's saying, listen, if you're saying you want to do this, all right, but you got to go with me. Like, it's not just me. You're also in the same. And one of the things I think where their relationship's growing, in this pivotal moment, I think she's starting to understand him more than she ever has. Because she's in this world right now where she's fighting to defend it. It means something to her. But yet there is the attraction to, we could both get away from all of this. This life we've chosen to lead. And it would be okay. It would be right to do it, where we just sit there and say, you know what? We could be happy, and it's okay at this point for us to be happy. We could leave together right now and both be happy. But the deal is we have to leave together. Or we can both realize we've got our responsibilities. We've got our promises to ourselves and our promises to this world that we're trying to protect, each of us having our own areas. She knows, like, he struggles just as much as she does. There's nothing to be said there. So he gives her everything that he could find on Carl. And I love that, it's this moment between the two of them where it's what you're saying. It's how do we get to that point? And I think it's true of any normal couple. You have compromises that you need to make. You have to figure out what life's going to be. And I think truly successful couples are able to look at different paths. And, there's different avenues you can take. There's always forks in the roads. And the trick is you've got to go down the right forks together, whatever they are. Sometimes the left and right road, it's not that one choice is better than the other, but if you both go down divergent paths, your relationship's going to go down a divergent path. And that happens all the time. Sometimes it's for the betterment of both people that they have to go down separate paths. Other times you can make either choice together and have it be the right reason for both of you. I loved how natural this felt. So my belief is, can they make it as a couple? Yes. It's gonna, if they as the powers that be come up with a way, that they want to head this couple in, and it's a lot of what we're reading right now. I think this is their path. I think we're seeing it unfold, and I'm hoping it leads to them being together. It's such an interesting ride because right now I don't want to know where it's going to go with them. I want to experience it, and I root for them to find a way to be together, whatever together looks like. Even if together is at times in different places. It can be a unique relationship. And it already is. Like, this can work if they want it to. And they can somehow work that out together. To me, what I'm finding that I'm enjoying reading right now is this dialogue between the two of them, where you see him smiling. Yeah. Just a bat chasing a cat on the moonlight. Simpler times, eh? That would imply that I let you, and she's gone. I just loved that. She
was the Batman to him.
Yeah, but they have this tender moment between them that, even though that awkwardness of the unsaid, we can't just walk away. We can't. I mean, that's what's happening there. They yet have this endearing moment between them. That they still love each other. That's not diminished at all in this sequence. So well written, so well drawn. I mean, this is just, I loved the orangish backgrounds, the orangish reddish backgrounds, whatever you want to call it. The coloring choice was tremendous. Everything that's in the foreground is what you want to be drawn to. The style of this book, I really liked the style of the book. But those opening pages just had me. I'm like, wow, is this just amazing, amazing writing going into us learning the intel. And I loved how that played out. Talk about a nice double-page spread that gives us, I feel like we're sitting with Catwoman now, where we should be in this book. To your point, I need to understand Selina. I want to understand Selina. We're back to, it's us sitting there with Selina, seeing things through her eyes, hearing her dialogue, her analysis of everything that's been put before her, not Bruce's. And it's interesting to see that piece, because in the inner dialogue that we're getting from her in this issue, I feel like we're gradually seeing her getting to know Bruce from an internal outward way that maybe she has never been able to experience before. Their relationship, their understanding of each other is taking on a different level, and I'm finding that compelling. I hope they're picking up on this, because to me, if you want to, Batman's had various different eras. The Bat books have had various different eras. And through those different eras, there's been change and evolution and growth and things going through it. This is compelling. There's so much to enjoy here about what's going through. If this quote-unquote year apart ends in them not somehow finding a way to be together in some way, some fashion, some workable way, I'll be disappointed. It won't be the end. I'm going to throw away Batman books. I'm not going to read anymore. That's not true. And I'm sure that they'll find some compelling story for me to just be glued to as well. But I root for them on that level where I'm like, I just want to see them somehow make it work in a way that's satisfying for us as readers, and also creative for writing talent to jump on board and be able to play with. I want them to have toys in the sandbox that are compelling for them as well. I don't want it to be in a way that paints them into a corner. And I feel like there's nothing from this that's doing anything other than being compelling writing. I want more of, this is great.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yeah. And I'll tell you, the sequence when we get started with her and Father Valley, the combat.
Yep.
Again, I do love the Bible quotes. I do love how it's throwing it out there, because, again, this is religion, extreme religion right here, big time. And you do like to see, I don't know, I like to see how they're applying this odd interpretation of biblical law to to this. This is something, all depending, with every religion, there's always going to be some form of extremist. And I like seeing this real extremist playing out because, when you talk about religion, like, oh, how can he kill? Well, he's explaining right here very clearly. Humble yourself, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, and it's completely going through explaining why he's about to kill her. Why is he about to break one of the big 10 commandments? Thou shalt not kill. He's about to break it. Why? Because God told him to. And I like seeing that. I like how they kept doing that throughout this series with this character. You get a lot of these extreme religion stories, and you got to have that belief that this guy isn't just, a crazy guy. He is a firm believer in everything he is saying. This is not him just, throwing out, kind of like throwing this out there to throw you off your game. No, he truly 100% believes this. This is ingrained into his core being. And we saw that in, the annual where we got to see his backstory. So I love seeing that in there. And then again, just when you're talking the art team, the 2-page spread fight sequence, man, showing the motion, just the boom, boom, back and forth. Absolutely love it. When you show fluidity, when you show motion on a still flat page, that for me is always a really cool moment. And they took moments to actually kind of have like the shock and just the determination and just the true grit that, she's got going on up against this guy. Because to be honest, he's a much better swordsman than she is. And she knows it, flat out. Yeah, she can fight, but this is a man who spent his entire life dedicated to this craft, dedicated to this purpose. What little training she's had in the sword will no way match up to him. And I like the fact that he does get the edge, but she doesn't hang back. She doesn't stop. She doesn't, she's Catwoman. Plan A doesn't work, improvise, adapt, overcome, go to plan B. Love that.
Here's the difference between the two of them. He's an assassin, she's a survivor. There's a difference. So when you go into combat and it's an assassin facing a survivor, it's a different sort of combat approach. She is not built for combating an assassin. It's just not her style. It's not her way of operating. It's not her instincts. Her instincts are to be a thief, to escape, to overcome. And it's an incredible talent. He can't match her talent in that, but she can't match his as an assassin. And it's something she's never going to be able to do.
Right.
Toe-to-toe like that. Actually, I love that, though, because you do see that she's got mad skills as a survivor. And it does enable her to go toe-to-toe and be respectable. And it's something that's really neat. One of the things you were talking about, is, extreme religion. And I think, what you call extreme is maybe a little different for me, because you went to public school as a kid. I get it. I went to private school. This was our playground. We did, the difference with me and you on that one is, yes, we did this during recess, but I was not good at two things. First of all, quoting the Bible. Second of all, I was not good at sword fighting. So I did not do well. Recess was not fun for me.
What are you talking about, John? Hey, you went to St. Will's. I know where you went,
I was right around the corner from you, too. You went to school across the street. The ruins of St. Thomas's Church and this whole investigation, this was cool. Because what I loved is you got to see that Father Valley was doing something very specific. And I love the detective work here. Because is he trying to hide something? What's he trying to hide? And it dawns on him at a certain point in time with what the building was being knocked down for. It was opening up a line of sight.
Yep. I'll tell you, and here's the thing where I kick myself on. Because I love this sequence. It didn't dawn on me until we get the end when we see the sniper scope set up what it was.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, so second read through, I'm like, how did you miss it? They made they did a great job telling us what was going on. I'm like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I was like smacking myself. But this is one of the things why I really like this detective, man. And given how this issue ends, I'm rooting for the guy because I like him. I like him a lot, and he's one that I could see would be awesome working with any member of the Bat family. I think down the line, I would love to see what Catwoman puts in a good word for him, and you get like him and Oracle working together, or him and Nightwing working together, or something like that. I think that would be a neat story to bring him into the fold of the Bat family eventually. Because again, this is one of the good guys. This is not a corrupt Gotham cop. This is not someone who's blindly following something that's really wrong.
Do you think he's still alive?
I don't know. Part of me says no. Part of me says you never say until you see the funeral he's not dead. Because you think about his Selina's right hand, who gets stabbed by Father Valley and left for dead. Until we saw that in the next issue that he had been picked up and he was in the hospital and he was in critical, but he was doing okay. He probably was going to pull through. Think of how that issue ended with him stabbing him and going, I'll leave you for dead. And he's just slowly going, Selina will come for me, and you're like, oh, it doesn't look good for him. And he pulls through. So things don't look good for this guy at the end. But again, until we see the funeral, he's still alive.
Because I'm like, the explosion there, that was Father Valley leaving the fight with Selina and leaving her with a bomb there. So the bullet goes off. Maggie is still alive, but look at him. I mean, I'm looking at the eyes being open and all that.
Yeah.
Boy, does it not look good.
No,
I don't want him dead. I don't want him dead. And let me clarify, I don't want him dead at all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Oh, no, it's as I said, it looks very bad for him. But again, until you see the funeral, he's still alive. So there's still a chance.
I did like the round 2 fight where Selina comes in a lot more prepared for the fight. It's really her kind of fight where she, sticks and moves, escapes like she does. I need to get out and ahead of this, but he's prepared for that. He sets up the ultimate trap by putting Maggie in the line of fire. And the only way for Selina now to not fight like Selina does, he has set the playing field up that you cannot fight like a survivor anymore. You have to fight like an assassin. And he knows she can't possibly win in that world. So they go toe-to-toe, face-to-face, and in the end, it doesn't matter what she's done. There's checkmate. The explosion going off, the shot going off. He has managed to pull off everything that he intended here in this sequence, not knowing that the detective figured things out and actually saved the day for Maggie. I absolutely love this world. This is just we're 34 issues into this book, and this has just been an incredible, incredible read. There's a couple of books coming out, Jim, that I'm excited for. Superman versus Lobo. I think that looks like a terrific one. And Batman, Big B Wolf, coming out. I'm a big Fables fan. Bill Willingham returning to Fables, doing a 6-issue crossover, Fables and Batman. Batman versus Bigby, A Wolf in Gotham. That's coming in September. And we've also got Superman 78 coming this month. Like, this is really cool. Did you read Batman 89 yet?
No, I haven't yet.
So I read the first issue of it. And for anybody that loved the Batman 89 movie, you're going to feel right at home. We'll talk about it, I think, in a follow-up at some point when you have a chance to read it. Because, we'll do like a Speeding Bullet style. I'd love to get your take on it. Maybe next episode we can chit-chat about it a little bit as a Speeding Bullets kind of thing. But it's a really, really good book for anybody who loved Batman 89. And that's what I'm hoping for with Superman 78, too, the same thing. It's they did that Batman 66 series and did a whole bunch of crossovers relating to it, like dream crossovers. Batman 66 and Wonder Woman, Batman 66 and the Green Hornet, all that kind of stuff. And I really, really loved all of those crossovers, but also the continuation of that. I'm thrilled that these miniseries are coming out. I hope they're successful because so much cool stuff to explore. I don't know. It's like this year there was that like gloom and doom period where like everything the sky was falling at DC, And now I feel like I'm just, every time I turn a page and I see another ad, I'm like, oh, another cool thing. Oh, that's a cool thing. I'm like endlessly excited for the new content we're getting. Yeah. So right now I'm kind of like, I'm less worried about the skies falling and more worried about like, how can I support getting the word out about this stuff? I think that's kind of the key of comics right now, right? It's just like delving in, enjoying the content, and getting the word out, because we're like this club, and I'm talking about comic fans. We're like this, like, too exclusive club. I think what we need to do right now is help get the word out that there's cool product out there, because I think the Batman 89 and Superman 78 are gateways for people that have not read comics before, but you know that, like, well, they loved those old Batman movies. Which I hate to say they're old Batman movies now, because you and I graduated in '89. But it's the reality that's been a long time.
It is an old movie.
Yeah, it is. It's hard.
Even though we hate to admit it,
it's hard.
Old.
It is very hard for me to say that. I'm recognizing now that as I'm reading that, I'm like, oh, yeah, the 50-year-old Sean, it's a long time ago. Like, you've lived more life than you did up till that point. Since then, so that's a long time ago.
Yeah,
but it's cool, and it's Sam Hamm is one of the writers on that, who was involved in those movies. Was the writer of the movie, so it's cool. Like, really has that vibe. Robert Venditti did the Superman 78, and nice. I'm so excited to read that. So cool stuff coming up. So speaking of cool stuff, I think a book that's getting a lot of buzz right now. Batman Urban Legends #6. Can we talk about that next?
Oh, yeah.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
Our next discussion is going to be of Batman Urban Legends #6. Red Hood and Batman in Cheer Part 6 of 6 is written by Chip Zdarsky. Eddie Barrows and Eber Ferreira, Ferreira, Scott Eaton and Julia Ferreira, with Eau Claire Albert are the artists. Marcus II, the flashback artist. Ariano Lucas on colors. Becca Carey on letters. Zealot in Blood for Blood. Matthew Rosenberg is the writer. Chris Spouse on pencils. Carl Story on inks. Pete Pantazis on colors. Josh Reed on letters. Tim Drake in The Sum of Our Parts, Part 3 of 3. Megan Fitzmartin is the writer. Belen Ortega on art. Alejandro Sanchez on colors. Pat Brosseau on letters. Black Canary in solo. Joshua Williamson is the writer. Trevor Haresline on art. Rain Beredo on colors. Steve Wands on letters. Nicholas Scott and Anette and Annette. I'm sorry, Annette. Annette Kwonk on the cover. Boy, I'm making a name complicated that's not. It's Annette. Sorry, Annette. And EJIKURE on the Black Canary variant cover. Jay Ansleto and Ramulu Ferrarajo Jr. on the Zealot variant cover. Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. Apologies for any name butchery on the simple and more complicated names, just because this book really, we had talked about it last episode that we were going to jump into the Tim Drake story because it's such a buzz, and for some strange reason I thought it was an Infinite Frontier, so apologies for the confusion there. I wanted to talk about this because this story has been a buzz for the events with Tim Drake in Part 3 of 3, but there's so much cool stuff to talk about in this book. First of all, anthology titles are my jam, because of the fact that not all of these characters can support their own books. I think any one of them could, but when you do an anthology like this, you're able to cover a lot more ground. I mean, a Black Canary solo story by Joshua Williamson that was crafted in this, that's a lead-in to a potential series. That's why I smiled when I said that one. Chip Zdarsky, and if I'm butchering his last name, I want to apologize. This Red Hood Batman story has been terrific. Chip's work on Daredevil was really where I got to know this name, and I absolutely adore, I know he's leaving that book soon, and if you have not read his Daredevil run, I know we're a DC podcast, but if you like his writing on this, you've got to read that Daredevil run. I'm liking that we're seeing his work over in DC more, just because I want to be able to talk about him more like this. But I'm hoping that this is leading to more series or more involvement from this writer, because Very, very talented, telling great stories. I want to say this actually about Matthew Rosenberg, Megan Fitzmartin. Everybody nailed it in this. Like, every story was a really well-crafted one. That's my thoughts. Are you liking this anthology title? Would you prefer these to be spread out solo books? How is this like? Is this your jam? Like it is mine?
Dude, this is my jam. This is big time my jam. I'm loving this, and a lot of the stuff you said, I was nodding my head along with it, where this really gives you a great chance to get, I got a Black Canary story and a Zealot story, all in one book, in one holding, more bang for my buck is what I always want from my comic. So give me this kind of stuff. I will buy this every day of the week. And in, Batman Urban Legends, I would love a Superman book like this. I would love a Wonder Woman book like this. To me, Wonder Woman universe would fit. Wonder Woman and Green Lantern would be the two universes I think would fit so well in this kind of environment. Because, again, you could have a main Wonder Woman story, but then you can have all the Wonder Girls, all the other Amazons. You can have a story on Themyscira. You could do all this kind of stuff. And then with the Lanterns, you've got your prime story, but then you've got all the other little side stories of the different Lanterns and the different things. This is something, anthologies really can give you some really cool stories and some good work. And I like the fact that this book isn't a separate entity. This is part of the universe. This is part of the Bat universe. We've got, in the Red Hood and Batman story, this is taken right along with continuity. This is an outlier. This is currently going on. Yep. We see, Zealot and, the Black Canary are leading to future stories in other titles, especially when the Grifter stuff that was, that ended last issue. Where that flat out they say the Wildcats are coming back. I'm like, yes, So I 100% was like, yes, bringing that in. And this is a great way to introduce people to who the Grifter was, who the Wildcats are. Gave you a nice tease. If you read this stuff and you saw that, you'd be like, hey, when the Wildcats book comes out, maybe more people will pick it up who had no idea who they were. Like, hey, I remember reading them in Urban Legends. Let's see what they do in their own book. And the Black Canary book leads directly to the Deathstroke Inc. Story. So, again, you've got a nice little crossover showing, directing people to go that route. Again, and I'm all for that because love the story here. Really looking forward to a good Deathstroke story.
Yeah. That's everything from this. I think you're nailing what I'm really loving about this. Anthology books were like sometimes hit and miss. And I think what's happening now, and where I was nodding when you were saying I'd love to see a Wonder Woman, I'd love to see this one, I'd like to see a Green Lantern one, actually. We'll talk about that later with our voicemails. What works with this is the quality of the writing. And every story's different, but yet they all matter. They're all a part of this universe. They're things that, like, each story matters to me. They're not all also the same length, and they don't need to be. I love this kind of stuff. Marvel and DC have published these kind of books for years. They've been some of my favorite books when they've been done really well. The challenge with doing these is to maintain the quality, to keep people coming back for more, that these stories need to be things that... I love that this Tim Drake story that we're going to talk about when we get to it happened here. It's a big story. It's Infinite Frontier, one of the reasons why I guess I assumed that it was an Infinite Frontier, that's had a lot of stories in it that have mattered. That's a book that I'm really digging because it's exploring elements of the universe that you can't get anywhere else. So that's been a book that's been really terrific on my list. I like the output that DC's putting out right now because there's a lot of different books that are covering a lot of surprising ground. The universe is starting to feel bigger again, and I applaud them for finding ways to do that because that's when the DC universe matters to me the most. I want other characters. This is cool because, let's get a great example. This is a Batman Urban Legends book. We've got Zealot in a story and Black Canary in a story in this book. I'm glad that their concept of who our Bat family is something that they're willing to expand and take a look at. It's more who makes sense to be connected to the Batman universe. The Wildcats being connected to this through the relationship with Grifter is working for me. I love them appearing in this. I think this is a great location for them. I know you've got to love this Red Hood and Batman story. Talk about progression of a relationship
Yep.
This needs to be followed up. Like, I want more of this.
Amen. I'm right along with you, man.
This is such a good story because it's been years in the making that they're getting to this point. And it's not just bam, now all of a sudden they've got this relationship. They're still working on it. And we're still, like, everything we were just talking about in Catwoman is occurring here in a very different way because it's not just the relationship between Bruce and Jason. It's Jason and Barbara, too. And I love that we've seen a relationship between them that's undergone an evolution over time. Jason admitting some things about his feelings for her that we know that she really doesn't. And I love seeing that in this. The opening with the garage where we got to see him, with basically that antidote, that single antidote that's there. And him having to take a look at the bat suits, knowing that there's not as many bat suits now because Bruce's setup is decidedly more modest. Still, The dude's got 4 bat suits. I'd take one.
Well, and a thing I loved about this was, last issue, Bruce, has that inner dialogue where he's kicking himself for not having his thermal suit, not being prepared for freeze. So what's Jason do? He prepares for freeze. He grabs the thermal suit. I absolutely loved that we had that. And again, I'm right along with you because you know me and Red Hood. I absolutely love Jason Todd, and 100% love the progression and the evolution we have seen from him over the years to the point where he is at now. And he's one of those guys that I'm so glad he's around, and they're not just using him as an also-ran. They're actually letting him flesh him out, letting him actually be his own person. And this sequence here, this whole story arc was absolutely wonderful in that you really get to see, what Jason and Bruce were going through with the when he died, and actually even before he died, when he was Robin, when he was learning to be Robin and all that. And this for me was just a great, wonderful story that I absolutely loved, man. I absolutely loved it.
With an interesting new villain. Like tied into Mr. Freeze, who's manipulating Mr. Freeze in his own way, and honestly, the jealousy of his own wife even, that's coming through. This is somebody who has taken his own experiments, his own need to be something more, and gone too far with it, and crossed some ethical lines. And we're seeing that here. I love it. I love this story because you're like sitting here, you bonehead, like, what are you doing? What he did with Bruce, like putting that mask on his face and knowing that Bruce is like trying to hold his breath, because we know Bruce has trained himself to be able to hold his breath for an excessive amount of time. Bruce is trying to calm himself, do what he normally does, but this guy's got his thug over there punching him in the gut, taking away Bruce's ability to do what Bruce does, and Bruce is trapped. I mean, there is no way to get to Bat Gadgets. There's no way to get out of this. The Mr. Freeze trap that's there, not only is he in chains, he's in chains that are frozen. He can't do anything here. It's really cool.
And feet, both in the blocks of ice. Right. I love the fact that we've got completely immobilized.
Yep.
Because if they had just done the hands over the head, he could do something with his feet. If they had just had the feet, obviously his hands would be free. So they took care of every step of the way to make sure he was secure. And again, I like seeing a villain who who doesn't get caught up in their own trap. And who actually, the level of strategery that Cheer has is pretty good. I'm digging this guy. I like this villain. I want him around some more. When initially with the Cheer, I was like, I don't know about this. Is this a Joker ripoff? I don't know. No, he's his own person. This is his own groove on the whole vibe. And I like how he took the Scarecrow toxin and manipulated it. So it's not the fear, it's paradise. It's Cheer, and I really dig this guy. I like this villain. I want to see Cheer around. He's like another person that I want to see cross over into the title. I want to see Bruce go up against him again, and remember this circumstance that he dealt with this guy, and maybe he'll be a little bit harder on him, or Jason go up against him again. This is a villain that I want to see around again.
I like when Jason comes in and says boo, and it's what I really wanted to see in this sequence. I wanted to see the fight. I wanted to see him, and he has to make this tough decision during this because he's hit with Cheers gas, and it's not the same dose as Bruce, but it's certainly a heavy dose, and we get to see how it's reacting to Jason, like what Jason really wants. He and Bruce have a lot of similarities on what would make them truly happy. Him, no more masks, no more Batman. We've finally done it. The Joker's dead. I'm done. It's over. And what would make him really happy is to, really be with his dad. He views Bruce as that father figure and wants to see him be this man at peace, like what he always wanted from Bruce that he never got from him. In Bruce's drive to continue his war, he knows that, inside Bruce, deep down at the core, there is the potential for this father figure that he could truly love. And I really love the tragedy of their relationship. It's a different sort of one. Every kid, I think, longs for something more. I think it's for a father, a lot of times it's... I think I'm guilty of this myself. You put pressure sometimes on your father to be what you want them to be instead of who they really are. If that makes any sense. And I think you hit a point in your life where if you can find peace in appreciating who they are and what they've done for you by in many ways being different from you, and what you can, if you're lucky enough that you have a father that you want to learn from and gain things from. And we both, had parents like that, where you get that. I love this story feels real, right? We talk a lot about how stories that revolve around mothers in comics, they connect with us in the way with our mothers. And I'm I was reading this and I'm I'm connecting with my own dad. I'm man, I was sometimes a little hard on the dude in my expectations for him. And this, just makes you connect with that. Fortunately, as I got older, that pretense dropped. You get more mature and you start realizing, no, maybe I'm being the putz here. But that's fun, when you can kind of read these things that are obviously, for us, a lot more extreme than anything we would have went through. But you can find connecting threads even in that extreme story. I love that about this. This spread where we see what Jason's going through, and then you get to see the other page where it's peace. It's exhilarating for the first time ever. It's family. It's life. Our lives stripped free of masks. And her seeing, him seeing the Barbara and Dick situation. He's torn between, I could just let go and give into this world that's crafting around me. But he knows his dad, Bruce, needs the antidote. He needs to be made into the man that ultimately he doesn't want him to be. He wants the guy in his dream. And it makes you respect Jason more that he's realizing this is not the way. Yes, I do want all those things, but this isn't how to get there. There's other ways to do this. There's right ways to do this. You learn a lot from him. This is the kid I fell in love with in the cult in that moment. Oh God.
That page, that one, that I love that how they did that story and art as well, where he's I feel, and he's got that groovy, Bruce needs me. He needs the antidote more than you. You can fight this, Jason. Fight it. Happiness can't. Happiness can wait. And that look on his face right there. And I'll be honest with you, when I read that, I heard the Bat voice. I heard Jason kicking into the Bat voice instead of using his normal voice. Just that dark, that brooding voice of, I am now going to beat you down, kind of sound in his voice. I absolutely love that panel right there. Because, again, Jason Todd is a really cool character, especially how they developed him and changed him and matured him. Right here, these moments of him being able to fight through the gas, him being able to push through mission first, continue on with the mission. I love that moment.
Yeah, I'm with you. It made the story matter more. Then he sets up this trap. And it's not unlike the trap that Catwoman's in her own book. The difference in this case is because of where Jason happens to be at and because of the connection with Oracle. He's not alone. Team Bat shows up, and it's Batwoman, it's Batgirl, we've got Stephanie Brown, we've got Nightwing, it's everybody's here. It's the signal's there. What a great moment. And Tim Drake is there rescuing the lady.
In the hospital. I know.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
I love the fact that Cheer had a backup to his plan.
Mm-hmm.
Again, intelligent villain here. He's like, fine, okay, you beat the gas. Good for you. I've got a guy about to kill the woman you saved. Take the full dosage that I gave to the bat, or I kill her. And he's like, guess what? I brought backup. I love that sequence. One, love seeing the full Bat family come in. But two, love the fact that we have a villain who's actually intelligent and who starts recognizing, okay, time to retreat. And he's making a run for it. He's recognizing, okay, he who runs and gets away lives to fight another day. Time for me to go.
Imagine being truly happy. And then having that yanked from you and realizing that this person gave you this false sense of bliss, this false sense of cheer, and coming back to that and realizing you're Batman. And we joke around saying how cool, dude, it'd be so cool to be Batman. It's not cool to be Batman. And I loved it in that sequence. You're seeing, where's Cheer? He's like recognizing, man, my parents were killed. My family relationship is not at all what I saw. And we do get to see later what Bruce saw and what Bruce had to give up, and the truly happy place that he was in. His anger and rage at Cheer, you see where he's almost at the point where he could go where Jason does, and Jason recognizing, for as much as I want you to be at my level and understand, judgment the way I do, this isn't the way, dude. I don't want you here this way, and he stops him in that moment. There is an understanding between the two of them in that moment that they have not had in a long time. And it didn't just repair everything, because you can't. There's too much that's gone on between them for it to be a snap. But boy, it sure did give them a chance for some growth there. It was great for us as readers to experience. This is an important story for the two of them. This six-parter has been a big story.
And big time, and I'll tell you, it's neat because, as you said, it does show the growth, it does show things, but they didn't, they did a great job with, baby steps, light steps. It's not just immediately everything's fixed now. No, with everything they've been through, they need to take their time with it. They need to work on it, and I like how after we get that really cool rooftop sequence, it's still 3 weeks later, and the woman's out of the hospital. Mm-hmm. Bruce is still recovering. That's how nasty this stuff, was. They're showing, again, these are regular people. They can't immediately recover overnight. It takes time. And I like that. Again, you got to have realism in these very wild stories. And these are the moments of realism.
Him with the kid, and the kid, recognizing that the, Red Hood's a cool hero. And, he's like, listen, kid, you can't tell anybody that. That's our secret. But also the endearing thing of making him the Blue Hood. The Bruce and Jason moments where it's clear that the two of them want something more. They, Jason's trying to bend, and say, listen, I'm going to drop the guns, but I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. But yet there is part of him that it's like he's telling Bruce for a reason, because it matters to him that Bruce knows. And that was the piece that I really loved about it. I'm like, at least he told him. I'm glad he got to share that moment with him. Very, very cool. Bruce taking that step of going, Jason, life is too short for us to be like this. It's the moment with Leslie shows us, then leads into what Bruce's relationship. And in many ways, Bruce wanted to do what Jason wanted him to do in his ultimate dream. Ultimately closing that door, and to the Joker, and giving his family. I love that their dreams mirrored each other so well. But then you get this great closing sequence where, hey, how about family dinner on Thursday? If you're ready for it, only if you want it. Basically recognizing he can't control Jason, but he can give him options. And it's like, if you want to be there. Chip Zdarsky nailed this. And the whole art team. Eddie Barrows, Ibar, and I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm just not going. I'm just going to say the whole art team, colors, everything. Flashback, great team. Really did a nice job with this story. It felt really important. If these anthologies are going to succeed, you have to do it with stories like this. This story, when it wrapped up, it was very satisfying. What a really great story.
Well, and I'll tell you, I love the fact that, like you were saying, I like how Bruce and Jason's mirrored each other, and especially like the fact that it was Bruce who kills the Joker in his fantasy. Because you think about it, every time Joker kills somebody, Bruce blames himself. And he knows I can't cross that line, but it's the Joker. And that was always, Jason's argument. It's the Joker. It's not like this is some common thug. But Bruce knows once you do that first kill, it'll start steamrolling. And he knows he can't cross that line. And I like seeing how Bruce wishes he could do that. Bruce wishes he could have this peaceful, loving life and with his family and everything, and that for me is awesome. But I especially loved, as you said, with that ending, where we get a new Red Hood outfit. And that outfit is seen actually in Detective Comics, I'm pretty sure. Mm-hmm. But we do see Jason wearing the new outfit. So, again, it's that connection to the Bat. Jason's being brought back into the family. And, again, only if you want it. But the big red bat symbol on his chest, that's you're part of the family. So I absolutely, again, I'm echoing everything you said, that Chip did a wonderful job on this story. Absolutely love this, and I want so many more stories like this, and I want more Jason and Bruce stories.
So the Zealot story. Now, Zealot's a great character, and that's really a good vehicle for Zealot, is having, Zealot in this type of anthology, because right now it's interesting to say the Wildcats are an important team. They are a known team. But I think for people that have been reading comics for years that are Bat fans or newer Bat fans, they may not be aware, because Wildcats have not been in an ongoing for a while. I'm glad that they're using these books as a way to get us to know the Wildcats again and reintroduce these characters. I always thought they were really cool. Zealot coming in, I don't know why I didn't realize when I was reading through this, I didn't look at the original credits. I just went through and read the stories. Yeah. Then I plopped on back. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not Wonder Woman. Who is that? Oh my gosh, it's Zealot going after Max Lord. How cool is that? And then he knew right away too. He's like, is she dressed as Wonder Woman? So he knew what was coming. Who was coming after him. And the ultimate escape of Max Lord. I love Max Lord. He is a great villain. The sad part is, I remember a time where I was reading Max Lord where I thought he was a great hero. Yeah. This is really a great story.
I'll tell you, man. Like you, when I was initially reading this, I was like, what's Diana doing? And when you get to see the Zealot, I'm like, oh, that is cool. That is so cool. But I love, again, just this introduction or reintroduction of the Wildcat universe.
Yep.
Because I read them, they were one of the books that I kind of read. I wasn't too heavy into it, but I read enough of the stories that I knew who these characters were. I thought they were really cool, and it was something that if I had a bigger budget back then, I would have been 100% all in on this crew. But you gotta love seeing, again, the layout on what they were planning, what they wanted. Yeah, she was going after Max Lord. Yeah, she's trying to kill Max Lord, but that wasn't the end game. There's a reason she was dressed up as Wonder Woman. It wasn't to just get past the outer guards. It was to get Wonder Woman's attention. And I love how that plays out when we go into 6 days later in Montenegro, when she finds him and she's hunting him down, and Wonder Woman shows up for the save. This all along was their end game. They wanted Zealot versus Wonder Woman. They wanted her to get her blood. And again, I smack myself in the head because the title of the story is Blood for Blood. I'm like, oh, I should have realized that, but beautiful storytelling. This right here was a great story, which really has me wondering, what are they going to do with the blood?
I like the swerve, though, that we thought this was her chasing after Max Lord, and ultimately this was just to lure Wonder Woman out into a situation where Zealot could get where she needs. These, it's the question mark, the end with the question mark. Gosh, I hope not. I'm really enjoying what they're doing with the Wildcats in the various appearances that they've had so far. So if they're going to keep delivering this kind of storytelling, more for me, please. I really am enjoying this.
Now, I do not remember the Zealot Wonder Woman connection. Is she an Amazon?
No, they've done things with her. There's a tricky part because there was the Wildstorm universe that was its own separate thing as a part of Image. Then they eventually, when Jim Lee came over to DC, became part of the DC universe. And I haven't read everything, but there have been stories where they've incorporated Zealot into the DC universe and connected her not as an Amazon, but because of her history. There's been similarities between them, reasons why there was things that connected them thematically, so they became friends, and there was a connection to Themyscira that arrived through that. They created a history between them that had to do with their shared similar backgrounds, I guess is the best way to put it. So it's not that she was an Amazon from from Themyscira, but yet she was similar enough that they respected her and she became part of them and sought similar companionship. There's a connection there. I'm saying it poorly because of the fact that I don't have a deep history with it. I know enough clearly to be dangerous in what I'm saying, but that's what it is. It wasn't like this. She is an Amazon, but she's close enough, if that makes any sense, that they found a common understanding. It's like when Superman connects with characters that have a similar...
I get you.
Yeah.
I get you.
So I think what they did with her is cool, and the way that they've incorporated her, I like it better this way because it leads to the situations like you're seeing, and that's where it's coming from. So let's jump to the story that has got people talking.
Big time people talking. I had 3 non-comic book readers ask me about this story.
Yeah,
and it was funny because the first one asked me, I was behind on urban legends, so I had no idea what they're talking about. I'm like, what are you talking about? And at first I thought it was just one of those internet rumor kind of things that isn't actually playing out. I'm like, what? And it was absolutely hysterical that I had non-comic book people who knew more about the comics than I did.
So what's interesting I really like the story. And it's one of those things where there's a difference between doing this kind of thing for shock value or just to create a buzz. And there's another thing about creating a buzz by doing this kind of thing for a reason that is compelling and interesting to see where they go with the character with this. This isn't like the end-all, be-all definitive statement on Tim right now. It's actually a definitive statement on what it's like to hit a point in your life where you're not sure about a lot of things and trying to discover who you are. Who you thought you should be is conflicting with you discovering who you are. And I think we've all hit that at some point in time in our life. And that's what this story is really about. So it's interesting how organically, this issue in particular, the inner dialogue with Tim made me go, I kind of get where he's at right now. He's trying to sort out, he has this image of who Robin is supposed to be, who his Robin is supposed to be. And he's so crafted this identity of the guy in the mask that he's got to also remember that he's Tim Drake and who Tim Drake is. And for me as a reader, one of the things I've always enjoyed is getting to know Tim Drake. It's not just Robin, it's really Tim Drake. You and I as readers have both loved this character. It's really interesting that he's going to rescue his friend right now, and his friend's kind of got this thing together where he's got feelings for Tim and wants to explore them and feels like, there's something there potentially between the two of them. Tim's trying to kind of figure out who he is across the board and where life goes for him. I got to say, one of the things I dug right away in this, when we got into page 2 of this, the evolution of Tim's costume. That costume's sweet.
yeah, it does look cool.
Because I've always been a fan of the Tim Drake costume. I think it's got the right elements of everything I've always loved about his costume while adding a modern flair to it. It's functional and fits Tim's combat style without going too far. It looks very today, but also has, I always like the black and yellow cape. This has been, out of the reworking of Tim's costumes, one of my favorite reworkings of it, because I really liked the classic version. So this has, to me, all of the right elements of that classic version.
Oh, big time. And I'll tell you, I like how, like in part one of this story, when he's talking to Oracle, she's like, hey, what code name am I calling you under? And he's like, let's just go with Robin since Damien's out of town. And I do wish, part of me wishes Tim would get his own call sign. And I love him as Robin, but part of me wishes they could create a different call sign for him, give him his own superhero identity other than being Robin. And again, nothing wrong with him being Robin. I like him as Robin. I love him as Robin. He was my initial Robin into the Bat family. He was the first Robin I really latched onto because I never read. I wasn't reading DC heavy when Dick wore the costume or when Jason wore it. So this is my Robin, but I would love to have his own identity. I think that's part of the interesting thing I had with this story, because he's looking for his own identity.
Did you not like Red Robin when he had that?
Well, no, I like Red Robin, but it's still Robin. What I'm saying? Even though it was Red Robin, I still think, I wish they could come up with something like, Nightwing isn't Blue Robin. Right. He's Nightwing.
Red Robin, I think why it worked for me is because it's so connected with the styling of the Earth 2 Robin as he got older, that I really liked that. It was kind of the Nightwing evolution you're talking about. I get it. It's kind of weird to have a Red Robin and a Robin. But so I'd like to see it. It's a tricky one because you got to find an identity for him that works, and you got to go somewhere with it. Like, it's got to be. I would love to see it in reality, either being an ongoing in the anthology or its own series or something. I'm glad they're exploring this character. I think what I've been missing is ongoing stories with Tim. So This story, one of the things I loved about it is I like the sense of progression with Tim. I actually like that in many ways, they're acknowledging what the problem we have for us as readers with Tim. It's been Tim was our guy, and Tim was like in his solo series, then Tim was leading Teen Titans, and then it was like Tim was dropped, and relegated to guest appearances where it was like, hey, let's not forget to throw in Tim Drake every so often. And it felt like that was where what was happening with the character. So when you get stories like this where we're really, it's almost like Tim's addressing that. Like, I've been in limbo, and it's like, who am I today? Who am I now? I know who I've been. I know who I was trying to be. The responsibility of being the one who ultimately should take over the mantle of the Bat, and me feeling like I should be the one who ultimately should take over the mantle of the Bat. I still kind of feel that, with him.
Tim and Damien are the two who I always would say should be the heirs of the Bat. And Tim was always my initial heir of the Bat over Nightwing. And it was just, I always looked at Tim as being more of the detective than Nightwing was. And I always saw him as the evolution. Then they brought Damien into the mix. So I was like, I don't know. And then eventually, I absolutely fell in love with Damien. I'm like, okay, no, Damien's the heir. But I still liked him in that role. And I'll be honest with you. Here's something interesting. It just popped in my head right now. Maybe instead of giving Tim a new name, give Damien a new name, and give Damien a new call sign, and have Tim 100% be Robin.
Sure.
That I wouldn't have an issue with. If they did that and they said, no, Tim Drake is Robin, Damian Wayne is blah, blah, blah. That I wouldn't have a problem with, to be honest with you. I would be okay with it. It's the whole sharing an identity, that I want Tim to have his own identity. So if his sole identity is Robin, awesome. If his sole identity is blah, 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 awesome.
Well, that's where I hope this story doesn't end here. I want more. And I would like to see, I don't care where it goes. I'm kind of with you, actually. If it leads to, like, Tim developing a new identity out of this, great. If it leads to Tim ultimately being the definitive Robin, great. I at any option in between, I just want to see some progression. Like, this progression, kind of a manifesting for us as readers, like, Tim's in this limbo state. And I like that he's addressing the relationship with Stephanie Brown. It's not like we're throwing... Sometimes they do things like this where they evolve characters a little differently, and they don't acknowledge where they were to get here. You know, Tim breaking up with Stephanie and that being a part of, like, she doesn't quite understand. And in some ways, he doesn't quite understand. And he's trying to figure out who he is across the board, in and out of the costume. It works in this story really, really well. Like, by the end of it, I'm like, I really get this kid and where he's at in his life right now. I love Tim Drake as a character. I'm rooting for him in this to see where this is going to go. I like the relationship with Bernard in this quite a bit. Like, I like that Bernard's kind of... We saw some stuff going on with Bernard in the background, and he's got skills. He's fighting. And Tim's kind of like, I should be telling him to, you know, get out of this, but yet I feel strangely at peace, strangely comfortable here. And you see the two of them standing together, toe-to-toe, fighting in this sequence, and I really loved the combat between the two of them. And he, though, had to say, listen, if I don't make it out of this, please tell Tim Drake, he helped me realize my true self, who I am. Tell him, well, he probably knows he's the smartest guy I've ever met, but tell him, I wish I could have finished our date, or I wish we could have finished our date. And I don't know that Tim realizes that's how Bernard viewed everything.
Well, Tim 100% going into that was saying, hey, I'm just meeting my old friend. Bernard was thinking it was a date. And I love the fact that they talk about that. It was like, you ever have that light bulb moment? And I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. And it was a great inner dialogue where Tim's playing stuff through his head as he's beating up these bad guys. Bernard's got some skills. He has had some hand-to-hand training. So I like seeing Tim and Bernard deal with the bad guys. This was a really cool moment. And I really enjoyed this. And it's funny because when, again, as I said, there was like, you know, 3 non-comic book readers came up to me and asked me about this, saying, hey, I heard Robin's gay. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, and I saw it online. I'm like, well, if you saw it online, it has to be true. But, you know, and then I asked you, I'm like, oh, I think it's in this story. And then we decided. So then that's when I got caught up on Urban Legends. Yep. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, that's kind of neat. And of all the Robins, Tim fits. Now, it was funny because when the first person who was asking me about it, I was thinking, like, Damien's Robin. Are they going to make Damien bisexual? And I was like, yeah, and I started thinking about it. And you think about who Damien is, he wouldn't let the societal norms or whatever you want to call it dictate who he was attracted to. If he was attracted to somebody, he would be attracted to them. But that's the issue with Damien. I couldn't see him being attracted to somebody. He's not that kind of guy. He's not sociable. He doesn't like people. He has his friends, but look at how long it took for him to actually develop friendships and develop teamwork. So a storyline where he actually starts dating somebody threw me off. So then I started thinking of all the different Robins, and Tim was the one I was thinking, you know, of all the past Robins, Tim would be the one who would fit, you know, the most with him. But then I was thinking, wait, he's dating Stephanie, but then they have this story where they break up. I'm like, oh, wow, this is really fitting who this kid is. You know, this fits this story arc. And I think that for me is, if you're going to do something like this with a character, it can't be for shock value. And this 100% is not shock value. This is story driven. And I love when a story-driven story takes you this kind of ways, takes you looking at people and looking at them in a different light. And you start thinking about all the different stuff they've done and how things played out. And that's something that I absolutely love with this. And again, second and third read-throughs, especially this fight sequence, you know, how they really did the art and the story. And in really even showing Bernard, he's doing a handstand kick. Yeah. You know, he's standing on one hand and doing the kick for that. You know, I'm like, right there. The kid's got some mad skills going on. I really want to see these two together to see where it goes, especially, is this somebody who could handle the secret? Because you think about it, when Robin first rescues him, he says, Robin, he's like, wow, I can't believe it was you. I was obsessed with you, So we got Bernard, who's got a thing for Robin as well as for Tim. Right. So that really could play out long-term story-wise as well. There's so many things they could do with this story, and I'm very excited to see where they take it and what happens and whatnot. I'm actually very happy with this, and kudos to writing as well as art team on this one.
Okay, let's talk about writing. Ever had a light bulb moment? Like something out in the ether has been taunting you, teasing you. Like you're supposed to be on the same page with your brain, but not everything made sense. People keep asking me what I want. Oracle, Dick, Steph, even Connor. But I couldn't grasp it. Whatever it was, it always felt just out of reach. Until now. Until right now. So where does that leave me? One of the things that really worked about this story is all of the action pieces that you're talking about, but matched with dialogue that feels like Tim Drake, feels like the character that we've been reading for years. It's really, really important that if you're going to go here, it's a bold place to go. If you're going to go here, though, it needs to feel organic. If it feels forced, if it feels like we're just doing this for shock value, it's going to leave fans angry and disappointed because now you're just changing a character for shock value. This didn't do that because then it goes from this to this really cool storyline where he has with this police detective who deliberately left clues around because he's like, listen, I figured you were going to be investigating this and kind of need your help. And it's interesting that the good police in Gotham are still recognizing that, like, these partnerships that we have that we're not supposed to have, well, they still have value.
Yeah.
And
they recognize the value of the masks.
Yes.
And I love seeing that, especially with the honest cops recognize that.
Yep.
Now, not every honest cop is going to be a fan of the Bat family.
Nope.
Not everybody who dislikes them is crooked. You're going to get some of the people, but anybody who is embracing the Bat family so far has been an honest cop. So I like that. It's kind of a neat thing that there's still some good people in the world.
One of the things I've learned with stories like this is you can't judge it until you've read it. Is it good or not? And it's an interesting sort of story. I really loved this story. By the time I got to the end of it, I'm like, wow, this feels organic. I can't wait till Batman Urban Legends number 10 where this is going to continue because I love Tim Drake. And it's great to see this character back in this story. We go from this cool story. I adore Black Canary.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, was this a cool... First of all, the artwork is fantastic. Great art team for this. Because this moment with her and Ollie, the artwork in the Hall of Justice is just brilliant with the two of them. Joshua Williamson is one of my favorite writers right now. The Flash run really won me over. So and Robin has been hitting it out of the... If you're not reading the Robin book with Damian right now, you are missing a really terrific book. We're going to have to at some point in time circle back to that book because it is way cool. So when this writer's writing anything, I just naturally jump to it. And this story, wow, finding out that we've got a Black Canary story with him, this was a home run.
Oh, big time, big time. And I'll tell you, I love, as you said, the dynamic with Ollie and Dinah is always wonderful. That's a couple I always want to see together. But the other crew that I always dig are Oracle and Black Canary. Come on, that's a given. Anytime you've got her in the mix, anytime you've got them working, it's the team Birds of Prey. You gotta love it. And I like where this story went, and how it came about. And again, it's one of those fluidity of the story. It makes sense that Oracle goes to Dinah to bring her in. I want to say undercover, but it's not even undercover because it's her real self. She's not pretending to be somebody else. She's being Dinah Lance Black Canary. It's, that's the cover. And I think that for me why it fits, why this was a really cool usage of this. And I was sitting there and I'm going through, and this trust, Juliet Valentine, again, who are these people? What's going on here? I love the fact that when we're starting off a story, I'm immediately going, okay, I want to know more. Tell me more. Who is this? What's going on? Where is this going? This for me was a great introduction and a great tease.
Anytime there's a reference to their relationship as the birds of prey, the roots, these two being together, Oracle and Dinah, in any capacity, harkens back to a book when it kicked off in the original miniseries that they kept doing, that led to eventually an ongoing. I just really, really loved this. Chuck Dixon had put them together. I think that was the first miniseries was, and all those miniseries following. I know the Solo kicked off with Chuck Dixon, great writer, who really then it led to the run with Gail Simone that just hit it out of the park. I've always loved these characters. Actually, the run with Gail Simone is what made her, to this day, she stands as my favorite author. I love the work when she hits, when she starts writing stories. I just absolutely love everything she does. And her take on Black Canary in general. Remember that one where she was like, it was that situation where they take out her leg? Yeah. She couldn't walk. And it was like something out of Misery, right?
Yes.
And it was just like this really great story where we got to see Black Canary just really step up as like this top tier character. Eventually, I think because of how well she was handled in that run, remember she became leader of Justice League, and you and I adored that.
Big time. And again, you really got to see the determination. She wasn't just the hang on for Ali. She wasn't just arm candy. No, she is a legit badass. And you got to see that in that Birds of Prey run, especially that whole torture sequence that you're talking about. That was just absolutely... to say it was beautiful is kind of hard because it was a torture sequence, but the beauty of the chaos of the pain of this, just how that story played out was absolutely just wonderful. And it's one of those things that you have those moments where you push your hero to a level that I would have cracked 100%. I'm done, tap out, but you see the hero push beyond that.
Yeah, and that's something that's really important. I love how cool she makes these James Bond moments seem, where she's like going undercover. She's like, I want the car. Can I get the car? I want the car. And the car becomes a big part of the story, but also the dress becomes very James Bond, and she's infiltrating. I saw it coming, that it was like a double swerve, like this was a setup that was somehow done to bring her in to the team, like prepare for a war that's coming. I didn't see Talia coming at the end and that being the case, but I felt like there was something going here. And I loved that this story wound up being even bigger than I thought it was going to be. I didn't see Deathstroke being a part of it. I knew that she would eventually find the Batmobiles and like that there was something more going on here than what we were seeing. But while I expected the twist, I did not expect where the twist was going.
And I'll tell you, when the bad guys first hit, she immediately goes to Oracle. Is this you? Not me. My first thought was this was that Juliet doing. This was a test. She was throwing out a test.
Yes.
Now, granted, the test. I probably should not have seen that because the first person they kill are her own personal bodyguards, but. We've seen villains do far worse,
Correct.
In the name of their grand scheme. So I was honestly thinking initially this was them. I 100% did not see Talia at all or any of the League of Shadows or any of that stuff. So that last swerve was absolutely brilliant. And again, her going undercover, and again, it's undercover as herself, but she still is undercover. It was a neat moment of... one, you get to see the power, but two, you get to see her intelligence. You get to see how she's able to improvise, adapt, and overcome on the fly. She's going in there, the blockers are up, and nothing like Oracle's ever seen. So she's now losing Oracle. She's now going in by herself. no problem. She's Black Canary. And I liked seeing just, again, that confidence and just everything, the strength of who she is. This is kind of a cool moment, where, she picks the right time. Even, again, it was neat because when the initial stuff where she's like making her the offer, and she's not initially jumping at it. She picks the exact perfect moment to say, I'm in. When she shows the picture of her parents in on, as already part of this, that really right there locked it in. Juliet's now thinking, I've got her. Not because of she's here undercover trying to infiltrate. I've got her because of this family stuff. She completely is playing into what Juliet thought would happen. And again, that was a great read on her part, to say, okay, this is the perfect time to say, yes, I'm in.
Going back to her history with Slade was an interesting place to go. I love that it's Deathstroke. I mean, we're doing a deep cut here right now. And I'm glad that they're bringing this into play. I'm anxious to see where this storyline is going to go. And I'm ready to see Talia come back into the storyline. This Shadow War that's coming in Deathstroke Inc. I'm wondering if that's going to be a mini-series, what type of thing that's going to be, or an ongoing. I don't know what that's going to be.
I thought he had an ongoing. I thought they were giving him another ongoing.
Great.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I'm hoping it's an ongoing.
Yeah.
But
I wonder if
I tell you, Lady Talia. Talia is one of those awesome characters, and I really love whenever they pull her in. And this Shadow War, again, like, yay! they're giving me so much out of this one issue is launched so many, oh my God, I can't wait for this, I can't wait for that, I can't wait for that, but what about this, what about that? That's something that you want to happen in your introduction. You want to happen in your taste. You want to get people thinking off page. And immediately I'm thinking off page, what's going on with the League, what's going on with Trust, how is Deathstroke and Black Canary going to work together? Whose blood is he wiping off his blade? There's so many questions that you can have on this.
This is a great book. I love them using this to introduce certain things, to create buzz for certain things, to support stories that couldn't occur in other books. This is what I want from DC. So I hope if this is successful that we see more anthologies. I like Infinite Frontier because of its style of expanding the universe as well. These books where they're expanding out and showing us more characters, my biggest fear when they pare back their books is how are we going to get stories with other characters, and this was really cool. Jim, we got a voicemail. Want to discuss it?
Yes.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
How you doing, Sean and Jim? This is Rasul calling to talk to you guys about the two movies. Black Widow, I know it didn't make a lot of money. Everybody's upset, but Marvel was going to have a movie that didn't make $1 billion. So everybody stay calm. It'll be okay. The Suicide Squad, the same thing. I guess the reception from the first movie made people not want to go see the second movie. But I can tell you, get up off your butts, go out to the theater and go see it. I watched it at home, but I am also going to see this movie in the theater. Both movies was great. Comic book movies is still popular. It's not failing. We're still good. Just can't wait for the Black Adam movie. That's the most movie that I'm anticipating. Can't wait for that movie. My next subject is about the new Kal book, Son of Superman. Now, this is what DC is all about, a legacy. This is what Earth 2 was good for, where you can have a gradual aging of the old characters and the young characters could come in and take over. That's what DC need to go back to. That's what the old fans was really upset about, and they never forgave DC for getting rid of Earth 2 for that very reason. That's why they are so upset about it. They never forgave DC for that. DC can rectify this with this new series, and they can make more series about these types of characters. You can keep the old guys, but let us have that legacy back. I'm going to support them regardless because I love DC Comics. But that's what we need. This book, Kal, is a great book. I was skeptical about them aging them very fast, but it worked out perfectly. These two characters together, him and the little snot together, is amazing. They need their own ongoing again. My next subject, I've been hearing a lot of stuff on the forums about DC Comics producing too many Batman comics. and I'm going to stick up for DC. DC and Marvel have given the comic book fandom great books to buy. But if you don't pick them up, they're not going to keep making them. So they're going to make the 1,000 Deadpool books, the 10,000 Batman titles, and this is what you're going to get. So if you want a Captain Comic book to make it, or Adam Strange book to make it, you're going to have to buy the book in abundance. It can't sell 4,000 comics and expect them to keep making it. It's just not going to happen. You can't take chances on stuff that people will not buy. DC gave us a new age of heroes, had some great books, The Immortal Men. The Silencer book was amazing. We didn't crickets. No one did anything. So comic fans, you have yourself to blame for these very things. I would like to speak about the Batman books, The Legend of the Dark Knight. That is my favorite Batman book. Didn't think I was going to like that book at all, but that book is my most anticipated Batman book, and I'm also enjoying the Urban Legends book. Batman needs a book, an anthology book, where you can have a Robin character in there, a Spoiler, a Cassidy Kane, and an outsider's title, a Talon, Batwing. This is what Batman needs. This is the same thing that the Green Lantern universe needs. It needs an anthology book. I know they don't sell well no more, but people want those other characters in the book. And since Green Lantern cannot support the big form of having 7 and 8 books like a Batman can, he needs an anthology book, and the fans going to have to pick it up. So it's up to us fans to go out and buy these books if we want these books to be successful. And my last topic for today is the Milestone universe. Please, people, go pick these books up. I was a first-generation Milestone person. I bought every Milestone book they could do. The only book I never ever got a chance to get was Static Shock, The Return of Slick, but I have read the book, and when I ever see it in floppy form, I will buy it because I want all the floppies. The new iterations of the books are pretty good. They're virtually the same. They changed a little bit with the Black Lives Matter movement, and they integrated that into the new book. And the Icon book that then came out is pretty much the same origin. So they didn't change very much. But what I'm trying to tell people, these books were so good. I've never read letter pages in comic books, but back then I read them because doctors and lawyers used to be writing these books because those books were very important for the black community. And I tell all black and brown people, if you want comic books to make it, or people of color books with people of color in them, you got to go out and support the books. You can't get mad that Marvel and DC and other companies not producing a book when you don't go out and buy them. You have to go out and support the books. Even my Caucasian fans need to pick up some of our books and help us out because we all in this together. We need each other to support the industry. You don't just say, I don't not buy a book because it's a white guy on the cover or just a black guy. I get all comic books because I like the ideal of heroism. So go out and pick these books up. Milestone is on the app now. You can read the first 50% of mostly all the issues. Go out and read these books. You guys are going to enjoy them. You got the best podcast in comic books because you guys are positive. You just talk about what you like. It's no bashing. You don't feel like you feel stupid for reading stuff. You guys keep on making these great podcasts. Make another 600. Can't wait till you get to episode 12, Andre. Hopefully comic books be around, but I think they will be. I don't think the industry would never go away. They said comic books was going to be going in the 50s. It's still, it's 2021, and we still buying them at stores. So you guys keep on raising, keep making great podcasts, and I'll see you guys next time. And go out and watch those movies, fans. We need you.
Rasul, thanks for calling us, buddy. As always, he's left us with a lot to unpack there, and there's some interesting things he's talking about. We've talked about this when we did our Suicide Squad episode, about box office dollars versus streaming. Like, how are they determining what a film actually does? Because Black Widow and the Suicide Squad both fall into that same category of they were available day and date on streaming services as well. Now, Black Widow was an extra premium charge on Disney Plus in order to be able to watch it. I saw it in the theater the first time and absolutely adored the movie. I went and bought it afterwards. because you can own it now. The Suicide Squad was available on HBO Max, so if you're already an HBO Max subscriber, you get that free. There wasn't a premium upcharge for it. And I'm wondering how that impacted box office dollars. I guess what I'm concerned about with the studios is how are they determining the success of views on streaming services and purchases on streaming services for these movies as far as success. I know there was some controversy around Black Widow in particular as far as what actors are supposed to get with regards to residuals with movies, and I won't pretend that I understand what the contracts look like in that scenario, but when you move it to streaming at the day and date, it obviously impacts the box office dollars. It's going to. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Are they somehow compensating them on the streaming revenue? What does that look like? It's an interesting sort of new territory that we're covering off of that. But taking that controversy out of it at the moment, I was glad to see in this summer we needed blockbusters. We needed big movies coming out. I went to the theater in short order, more than I probably did in the year before the pandemic, because I was excited to get back out and go to movies. So I got from Regal that pass where I can just go see movies, and I'm excited to see the new Hugh Jackman flick. The only reason why I haven't seen it yet is because of I'm working on the last 2 papers for my classes, so I was tied up yesterday. I couldn't actually go and see it yet. Instead, I watched what happened on AEW last night when I got home, and I was able to actually do so. Yeah, but I'm excited for the theater experiences, and I want us. He mentioned Black Adam. I want these big budget movies, not just superhero and comic movies. I want film to be successful in general in this changing era. So I'm very. And he's right. The best way to support these films is to make sure you're seeing them. Also, clicking on them and watching them on streaming services day and date is a good thing to do as well. You know, if you're not going to the theater, give them the clicks. That way, because they do track how many times people have viewed these films, you know, on those services as well as a success rate. Did it draw subscribers? You know, you are putting your money where your mouth is in all those scenarios as well when you're watching them. So it's interesting moving forward. I think they're trying to figure this out. Legacy heroes. You've always been on this podcast a big proponent of legacy, advancement, and progression, which is a DC staple. He's right. How it manifested was this idea that the older heroes moved, you know, they were actually all their stories took place on Earth 2. We were seeing their continued progression. The Silver Age characters were actually in a completely different universe. That became Earth 1, and that's where the multiverse concept came from. So DC's always explored this idea of progression. I'm with him on the Kal-El book being another example, and I love him and the Little Monster together. So yep. That book was a home run out of the gate, and I like seeing that. I like what they're doing with the Future State books that they've continued, and the fact that we are getting the Batman from Future State in his own title. I'm liking those explorations. I like that there's a healthy balance of our classic heroes and some of these new explorations. I want more of this. This is successful for me. So I'm glad that they're exploring some of these things. What do you think about his thoughts on legacy and aging? Where are you at kind of on that right now?
Well, you know where I am, man. You know, dude, I'm all for it. And I'm loving it. And everything he was going on, like, yes. Right along with you, my man. Right along with you on that. Because, you know me, John Kent. I love that. I love what they're doing with the Superman and everything they're saying. This is the legacy. This is the continuing on of the story. And I want all this stuff. And I, of course, cheered when he also said Green Lanterns deserve an anthology book. Again, right along with you on that as well. And again, as I threw out in the episode, Wonder Woman, I think, would do wonderful. Because I'd love to see an Amazon. I'd love to see stories about the Amazons, all the different Amazons throughout the world. People who were friends with Wonder Woman, could have a little side story. Characters, people who are a one-shot, part of a story. Well, let's continue on the story. Etta Candy, could have a story arc, or Trevor, always have good stories with Trevor, But there's so many things they could do with these different anthologies. They could do with progression. They could do with And again, they're doing it. I like how DC is doing this. And all the sentiments and comments about too many Batman books, again, right along with you, man. If a book sells, they're going to keep doing it. Sure. And the Bat books are the ones that sell. If you want more than just Batman out there, you got to support these other books, And it's, we tried talking about not just Bat books, we tried talking about everything, but again, it's, there is so much out there. That's something that we as fans have to do. We have to be the advertisement for this. If you've got a book that's really cool, talk about it, on forums, online, on whatnot. I don't know. Where else can you talk about this stuff? But, let people know about this, that there's this really cool Flash story going on. There's this really cool, the Milestone characters. Those are wonderful. Right? I'm 100% along with you on just how great those stories are and how much I'm absolutely loving those stories, and I'm going back and I want to find the old stuff and I want to read the original stuff and go back to that. And so it's there's so much that we as fans have to do. And you see something, you love it, talk about it. And that's, I think, the best thing we can do. If people hear you and hear how much you're loving something, that's going to get them saying, hey, let me see that. He's really into that. Let me give that a try. Let me give that a read, because maybe I'll like it. Because, we all have books that we're reading like, okay, it's all right. I'm going to keep reading it because I got a long history. That kind of happens sometimes. We do get in ruts. So when you hear about something that's just epic, or you hear something that you really enjoy, tell somebody about it. And people, when you get a recommendation for something, don't just read the first page and say, it's not for me. For me, I always judge a book based on the first story arc. I'm committed to a book for the first story arc, even if, like I've had a couple of these, like, Comixology does the thing recommended for you because you blah, 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 try this. Yeah. So I'm big on buying those things. So I'm reading a lot of non-DC stuff because of that. And sometimes Comixology is spot on. Sometimes I'm like, dude, really? Why did you think I would enjoy that? But I give it a story arc, and I give it a full read just because I'm like, let me give this a full read and a full try, and it's, sometimes there's some home runs, sometimes not so much. But when you got a chance to try something, give it a shot, give it a read, and I'll tell you, you can't go wrong on the Milestone stuff. That is, those stories right now are really hitting for me. I was like, man, this is kind of neat. Just one issue in on some of those made me want to go out and read more.
One of the things that you said really interested me. Actually, everything you said just interested me, but there's something I wanted to touch on. You mentioned that you give books an arc. So in the case of some of those recommendations, or even a DC book or something like that, where the first issue didn't grab you, are there, and I'm not looking for specific examples right now because you wouldn't certainly been prepared for this, but have there been a significant amount of times where you felt kind of lukewarm or not interested, and then the arc changed your mind?
Oh, big time. And I'm trying to think off the top of my head a couple different ones where I was like, I don't know about this. And by the end, well, any of the Harley stuff, I'll be honest, right now, Harley is a big name that happened. The Amethyst story, actually, that miniseries, I was like, okay, that's kind of, but I wasn't 100%. By issue 6 of Amethyst, I'm like, I want issue 7 now. I want to see the story continue. As I said, the Harley stuff, 100%, was I really want to see more of that. Just doing a quick look over different stuff to see if anything pops off. Some of the Green Lantern, actually, the one Green Lantern. That's the Green Lantern season 1. Beware My Power. One. When I first read the first issue on that, I wasn't 100% on it.
The Grant Morrison. You mean the Grant?
I don't know about that.
Grant Morrison's book.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know about this. I had to go through a couple issues before I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. I'm digging this, But that was one right there that I know it took me a little bit. And because if I had just dropped it at issue 1, that could have very easily, been a drop it after reading only one issue. But I give it, as I said, you give it some time. So that's a couple stuff right off the top of my head.
I agree with that. Actually, that was funny because I really enjoyed that. But not at the beginning, and I didn't hate it at the beginning, but I was like, oh, this is okay. But then as the run came on and I really started to get a feel for what he was doing and where he was going with it, it had a slow burn to it. But when it hit, it like hit hard, and I was like, wow, okay, now I'm really digging this. But it was the first couple issues for me. I was very lukewarm to it. And then by issue 3, I really started to get a grasp for what was going on. And I wouldn't have changed anything in issue 1 and 2 after I hit that point. I'm like, I needed all that to get here, but I wasn't here in the beginning of it. And we didn't really talk about that on the show, I think, because we were both going through some personal stuff. So it was unfortunately a series we didn't get to really talk about. Maybe at some point in time we can revisit and chat a little bit about season 1 and season 2 of that, because I wound up loving that by the end. But that is a great example, I think, of your point, where you can't judge a creative team change until sometimes 2, 3, maybe even 4 issues in. Just to really see where it's going. To your point about an arc. And for me, that Green Lantern season 1, when you threw that, I was nodding. I'm like, oh, no, he's right. Man, that was one where it was such a drastic change, I think, from what I was used to in its pacing and presentation for a Green Lantern story. But when I eventually got where Grant Morrison was going with it, I was like, okay. That was one where the name of the writer and what I know about the quality of his written work was what kept me going. And I'm very satisfied I did, and I loved it. But it took me a little bit to get there. Let's jump back a little bit to one of his things, because we really have never talked about this. The idea of too many Batman books. You and I both were fans of X-Men growing up and read multiple runs of X-Men where they have like 27 gazillion books. I go back to the X-Men, though, where there was one book. I mean, one. Uncanny X-Men was where my starting point was. And I saw that explosion, and I loved getting more of those books. So I get why the companies do this. What happens is when people get interested in something, that graduated from a Wolverine miniseries to New Mutants to Wolverine having his own book to eventually multiple X-Men books. Truthfully, I wouldn't have changed anything that they did. X-Factor becoming a book. I loved that gradual growth of the line because I wanted to read more. I wanted to read more of these characters. In the case of Batman, right now, in the current state of DC, with the Batman books that are out there, is there a Batman book that you would cancel? Are there really too many?
No. See, I tell you, the books we have right now, I think we have a good balance on what the story they're telling, what kind of story they're telling. You know, I think if, like the Urban Legends, because it is an anthology book, I think one of the reasons I really like if that was another just Batman Urban Legends, where it was only Batman stories being told, then I'd be like, I don't know, do we need to have that? But because it's an anthology, because we have the other stuff, I'm good to go on that. And you look at all the other Bat books, yeah, there's Batman books, but how many of them are solely just about Batman? It's Batman and this, you know, and there's the different dynamics of within the Bat family. So I personally think, no, I think we're good.
Yeah, I agree with Russell greatly on this, and your thoughts too. It's not. I'm loving every Batman book that's out there right now. But let me use a great example. We're doing for our next episode. We're going to do a Detective Comics catch up. Detective Comics, not because of quality. I've been reading the Batman book first because I know that's the one that's kind of building towards Fear State, which is the big, blockbuster that's coming up. And I've been staying up to date with that. I've been going for my superintendent's license this summer. So during the week, I've been struggling with 2 classes that I'm taking in this compressed time frame. It's a summer cohort where I've been taking 6 classes this summer, but they've been, really compressed and everything moves been very fast. I do a lot of my reading where I'm catching up on books right now. And I'm quite enjoying, like Batman Urban Legends, when we did this, I had to catch up on a couple issues like you in order to get up to speed for this episode. Loved it. Actually, the reading experience was terrific that way. But I wasn't thinking to myself, I'm like, oh man, if there were just less Batman books, I would get to this. I mean, right. Detective Comics, I'm getting caught up on that right now for our next episode. And same experience. I'm like, this book rocks. Yes. And spoilers. But we're going to be talking about why next week and into that piece. So some of the other stuff like Curse of the White Knight and stuff like that, the miniseries that have been coming out. I love all that stuff. I'm with him, though. Let's support some of these other books. Milestone is a terrific example. I love the DC books, and they're really any of these characters. And I want to, in September, as we close out this month, because we've got a lot of our slate in place, I want us to circle back around and talk about Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and The Flash, and jump back into these books. But I definitely want to go back to Nightwing, for example. I'm having a lot of fun with that book. We actually just had a forum request on Facebook to chat about Nightwing, and I do want to do that. We're going to put that on the slate as well. There's a lot of books I want to talk about. The nice part is DC has a really nice lineup right now of books that aren't just all... I want to talk about Justice League again.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Because Justice League's been great. So there's some really good books to talk about coming up that September is going to be a fun month for us, I think, of circling back around. We're going to be following Fear State because that event's going to be huge. But while we're discussing Fear State, we're also going to be chatting about other books in the DC universe. And I want to do both. So I do not think there's too many Batman books. I want, like everyone's suggesting from that, I want more of these books. The problem is the dollars aren't showing that. What we can do as fans about that, though, we have a lot of control and power. Here's where we have power. We're this tight little club. We need to increase the size of that club. And the only way we can do that is by letting people know they should be reading these things. You as a fan have a lot of power. If you just get one person interested, because and interested in things that they would genuinely be interested in. You can't force somebody to like Green Lantern if they don't like Green Lantern. It's not going to happen. But comics do have a natural jump-on point for a gaming audience in particular. I think will love comics. I think you need to know the potential reader. Like, I wouldn't give a science fiction novel to somebody who doesn't like science fiction. You have to do the same thing with comics. Really get to know them and share them. I think he's posing an interesting point about supporting them. I like his idea for a Green Lantern anthology. Talk about a group that's ready and ripe for more stories. It's Green Lantern. I love the current Green Lantern book, and I want to talk about it again, but I would dig an anthology because there's so many characters that aren't spotlighted, and there's time to talk about them. And I would love to see Green Lanterns get an anthology book. They've supported multiple books before. I would love the right creative teams being involved in some short stories.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. RagingBullets@gmail.com is our email address if you'd like to get us that way. RagingBullets.com is our show website, and that's always where we post new episodes as soon as they're released. It does feed to Twitter. It does feed to our Facebook fan page. We are also part of an amazing Facebook group community, and it's really just such a great group of people. It was referenced actually in Russell's voicemail, and I love going there. It's where I get my news. It's where I get my commentary. People there are great. And I just want to thank everyone who participates over there. I look at it now not so much as it being our Facebook group community. It's theirs, and we're proud to be associated with it. The About Us section of the show website is where you're going to find details on how to connect with us on gaming platforms and social media directly, because we love connecting with you. Sponsoring this episode is, of course, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what's going on over at DCBS?
We've got the Catwoman Lonely City 4-part limited series, 40% off, only for $19. And we've got the Wonder Woman 80th anniversary 100-page special with multiple variant covers, 40% off, only $5.99. Thank you, DCBS.
Just a reminder at InStockTrades.com about the Starman Compendium Trade Paperback Volume 1, $59.99 regularly, 42% off, only $34.79. That's quite the discount. Sandman, the Deluxe Edition, Book 3 hardcover. Again, really cool discount, $49.99 regularly, 42% off, only $28.99. Thank you, DCB Service and InStockTrades.com, not only for supporting our podcast, for supporting multiple podcasts. They're really cool, and we really appreciate you. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be back, and we're discussing the most recent issues of Checkmate and Detective Comics. We will see you then.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Are you ready to sing your song?
I'd say we are. Yeah, let's sing it now.
Okay, this should be fun. Now get ready for your cue. Okay, Sean?
Okay.
Okay, Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Raging Bullets time is here. We talk about what we hold dear. Comic books and TV shows. Superheroes and their clothes. Justice League and so much more. I just love Green Lantern Corps. We talk about the books we've read with spoilers straight ahead.
Okay, fellas, get ready. That was very good, Sean.
Naturally.
Jim, you're a little flat there, so be careful. Jim? Jim? Jim!
Okay. Justice League and so much more. I still love Green Lantern Corps. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show. DC Comics are what we know. The Raging Bullet Show.
Excellent job, guys.
Let's sing it again. Yeah, let's sing it again.
No, that's enough. Let's not push it.
Push it. What is that? Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, I didn't mean anything by that.
I think
Sean,
it's right there.
Jim,
I don't know.
how long do you want the song to go?
Look, it's our production.